Hello, my name is Yenny Aldana, and I'm doing my film analysis presentation based on the film Crack. My thesis is even though Black children and youth were not direct consumers of crack, this epidemic still highly impacted them and through the increase of low birth weight Black babies, Black children being placed in foster care, and Black youth homicides and imprisonment. The three themes I want to focus on today is the rise of low birth weight Black babies, rise of Black children being placed in foster care, and the rise of Black youth homicides. Low birth weight babies, in order to keep up with their habits of crack consumption, many women ended up turning to prostitution, which is why during the crack epidemic we see an increase of babies being born during this time. And because Black women were unable to get the access to the proper prenatal care and the access to healthier foods for a healthy pregnancy, they often gave birth to low birth weight babies. 5% of these babies were actually born addicted to crack. And because of the consumption of crack, it affected the maternal psychological status of Black women, which damaged the care given to their newborns. Black children placed in foster care. Crack addicted mothers and fathers were unable to provide a proper stable home for their children since through the consumption of crack they were in and out of jail. Um, so instead of being able to help them, come up with a solution for treatments for substance abuse, they were found it easier to just relinquish their parent rights on their children. So these children were growing up being neglected not only by their parents but also by fellow crack users. Um, and therefore, we see children today that have grown up with post traumatic stress disorder and who have become substance and alcohol abusers themselves. Youth homicides. Um, for the Black youth, it was a new way of income, um, to sell, produce crack cocaine, and therefore sooner or later the need of firearms was needed for protection and for territorial rights of where who can sell the crack, which this brought an increase of violence to Black youth. We were able to see that it went from an increase of six deaths per night to almost 20. And through the picture shown here, we see that in the Black males ages 15 to 24, it doubled the number of deaths in the African American community, which left their community traumatized, broken, and hurt. How did the crack baby myth criminalize Black women? Well, the crack baby was just a myth that the media created. Yes, babies were being born with being addicted to crack, but this was only 5% of them. But in regards of all that, all crack babies were able to grow up to be just normal human beings. In what ways can we measure the impact of crack cocaine in the Black community? We saw an increase of Black youth homicides, increase of low birth weight babies, children being placed in foster care, increase of violence, increase of weapon arrests, increase of crack houses, homes turning into crack houses. What were other ways that Black youth were affected by crack? They were blinded by the money that crack was bringing into their communities, but were unable to determine the fate that it would bring to them, which was mostly always death and incarceration. And through incarceration, they were unable to pursue a higher education, which left them working jobs that were not necessarily their dreams. What are some of the effects still seen today on the Black children? Family dissolutions, mothers that weren't able to raise their children that weren't able to grow up with their parents. And even though some of them were negatively impacted by this, there was also some that were positively impacted. or it didn't have that much an effect because they grew up to be normal human beings who pursued higher education. My conclusions, therefore, I conclude that the African American children and youth as a whole part have been negatively affected by these themes, but can help their position by seeking psychological help, seeking treatment, seeking higher education, seeking the proper prenatal care, and rekindling the Black family. And these are my resources. Thank you so much for listening.